Hello and welcome to this videocast for subscribers to davidicke.com. I watched a very powerful interview this week with a former member of the Israeli army, the Israeli Defense Forces, or IDF. He was speaking on RT, and he is connected to an organization called Breaking the Silence, which is a grouping of former Israeli soldiers like himself who saw what really went on in relation to the Palestinians, who saw what they were demanded to do, and wished to let the world know the truth that they would otherwise not hear. Because once again, in the wake of the Paris attacks, we have had another one-sided story which says Israelis oppressed and they on the other side are the good guys fighting for peace and freedom, and it's everyone else's fault basically. Now, the propaganda on behalf of Israel, not least through the mainstream media, is extremely slick and extremely incessant. And because of the oppression and suppression which this soldier describes in Israel, in terms of their right to say unfettered what they experienced and what they think people should know, when you put those things together, it's not surprising that we overwhelmingly only hear half the story. And whatever you're talking about in conflicts or any other situation, basically, whether it's Israel, wherever, the truth always turns out to be some shade of grey, not black and white. But what we've got overwhelmingly from the Israeli propaganda supported by the West is a black and white view, good guys v bad guys. And it's not a John Wayne bloody movie, and it's certainly not black and white. And it's about time people had the guts not to quiver in fear that they're going to be called anti-Semitic, and actually stood up for speaking the truth. Because this is not about attacking Jewish people. It's about looking at the behavior of the Israeli regime throughout the period since 1948, at home and abroad. And this information should be available to everyone, not pushed away. Ooh, they'll say I'm anti-Semitic. I couldn't care less. I care about the truth. And I care about what's happening to oppressed people, whoever they are, whether they're Jewish or whatever. And this group of former soldiers involved in breaking the silence, and many other Jewish people, both in Israel and around the world, who speak out against the many horrors inflicted upon the Palestinians by this Israeli regime, this Rothschild Israeli regime, are fantastic people, very, very brave people who get enormous abuse and threats often as a result. And we need more people like that to put the truth in context instead of in propagandized bias. So let's have a look at what he said in this interview on RT. His name is Aaron Hefrati, a former IDF soldier, like I say, who recounts his experience, assignments and killing protocols, along with what he witnessed as a soldier. And he first of all explains that it dawned upon him the similarities between what his grandmother experienced in Auschwitz and why he was compelled to speak out against Israel and the IDF, because he could see the similarities in how they acted compared with what his grandmother experienced in Nazi Germany. That's a staggering statement for a former Israeli soldier to speak, but this is not his only experience, or the experience is not confined to him, but there are many others who are speaking out in the same way. In Britain, people like Gilad Asmon and many others in this Breaking the Silence organization. And Iran says that he comes from a family of army officers in Jerusalem, really into the military system. And he says that he was told when he was growing up that the only way he could stop the second Holocaust from happening would be to join the best unit in the army he could and fight the enemy of the Jewish people. Of course, the draft is compulsory in Israel, and many very brave and committed Jewish young people go to jail to defy the draft because they will not do what they're asked to do in relation to the Palestinian people. Anyway, his family were survivors from Nazi Germany, and he joined the Israeli Defense Forces, and then he said he saw the truth. The truth, he said, was that he wasn't there to protect Jewish people from the enemy, but to put terror on the people in Palestine. He found himself, he said, not protecting Israel, but in the occupied territories protecting illegal settlements and settlers. Quote, I am there to police every minute of their lives. I am there to take their lives and control it, to go into their houses in the middle of the night to arrest them. Children, adults, young women, young men take their lives sometimes, responding to protest, any resistance, with very harsh violence, with rubber bullets, which of course are not rubber, he says, but real bullets just covered with a little bit of rubber. Or a tear gas canister, or sometimes live ammunition that will sometimes take the lives of the kids. This is the reality of what's happening in Israel, behind the bullshit and the propaganda that you see through the mainstream media. He said he was told to make sure that a dead child's family did not get out of their home to the funeral during an imposed curfew. Quote, and when the father is coming out to understand what is going on, we arrest him and the mother of the child that our unit killed the night before. The mother is screaming at us. Her screaming was exactly like the screaming of my grandma, he says, when I was growing up and she was dreaming of Auschwitz. The reason that this is so powerful is not only the source that it comes from, but the fact that it's true. This is what is happening behind the smokescreen, the propaganda, and the lies. Quote, I understood that this time I am not the victim anymore. This time I am the colonial force in the territories. This time, if I want to continue the legacy of my grandpa against the colonial forces, I don't need to be in the IDF. I need to fight against the IDF and Israel in the occupied territories. And he goes on to talk about IDF policy in relation to killing Palestinians. He said IDF policy of bombing one neighborhood to utter destruction is designed to show them they cannot resist. And he says that this is what happened in Gaza in that slaughter in 2014. On one occasion, he says, with full IDF official backing of bombing a single area with 120 one-ton bombs from the air, plus tanks, plus snipers. And he said that when people came back the next day to see the devastation, and they were screaming the names of family members that they'd lost, they were shot by sniper fire from Israeli troops. Now, the reason we don't hear this nearly as much as we should is because of censorship. He was saying how nothing that anyone says exposing what is going on can be communicated freely. He says that those exposing the horrors and the lies through their organization, like Breaking the Silence, can't be reported in the Israeli media unless it first goes through an Israeli army censor. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is the country described as the only democracy in the Middle East.